Okay, good evening, everybody. My name's Adam White. I am Government and Legislative Affairs for the Alaska Airmen's Association, and welcome to the September 2022 Government Affairs Update. First, let me apologize. There was a little bit of a mispublication. There's some bad information that we sent out in a email newsletter to the membership. We got the times wrong. It was published in that newsletter that the live event is at 5 o'clock on the second Tuesday. It's not. It's at 6 o'clock on the second Tuesday of every month, so apologize for that confusion. Also going to apologize for all the airplane noise. I am here in the hangar in Nenana, and it's a busy time of year with hunting season happening, and a lot of folks are out flying around enjoying the afternoon and evening. I enjoy being here with you. Looking forward to our time together, updating you on some of the issues. But if I was honest, I'd rather be up there turning some of that avgas into noise and heat and thrust. So anyway, so speaking of avgas, how about if we just talk about that first right off the bat? You may have heard that GAMI has got their STC approval for their G100 G100 unleaded fuel. They've been working on that fuel for many, many years, and they finally got their STC approval for all piston aircraft, and engine combinations. And they said that if your aircraft engine combination is not listed, let them know, and they'll work on adding that to the list. They said it should be a pretty easy thing to do. You mentioned, if you remember last month and previous months, I've been talking a lot about fuel and what's going to happen with the EPA and their endangerment finding that we anticipate coming out here in another month about leaded aviation fuel. I think this G100 unleaded, G100 UL, has got a lot of promise. As with everything new in aviation, I'm a little bit hesitant and skeptical, but the G100 UL has been around for a little while, but we still have to find out and make sure that it's going to be everything it's cracked up to be, especially with supply chain and distribution networks, and what does that mean for us here in Alaska. But it is very promising that the FAA went ahead and issued a blanket STC for a large swath of piston aircraft engines and airframe combinations. So that's good news. That means we actually have some options now. So we'll keep you up to date on those things. So just looking here at my notes, let me make sure I put an asterisk by some of these things to make sure that I cover them, because we want to make sure we hit all the things that are on my list tonight. It's good to see some folks checking in on both Instagram and Facebook. Sorry, again, apologize for last month not being on Instagram. We had some account problems with the Alaska Airmen's account, and I was not able to log in, but we obviously have that fixed now. So, speaking of other things that are happening, Fairbanks, if you fly in the interior and to the Fairbanks Airport especially, they're looking for your input and your opinion by September 24th. There is a East Ramp reconstruction project that is on the books, and they're in the scoping and planning phase of that now. They've got a few options to go back and resurface the East Ramp and rearrange the tie downs and some of the taxiways on the East Ramp at the Fairbanks International Airport. If you have any interest in that project at all, I please encourage you to go look at their website and let me know what your opinion is, so I can make sure that I am representing all the interest of all the membership. We've got some pretty good feedback from a lot of you that use Fairbanks. I myself am a user of the Fairbanks Airport, and I've got some opinions personally, but I need to make sure that that the Alaska Airmen's Association is representing the broader membership, not just the interest of a select few. Which, by the way, that is my goal, that is my ambition for all of these projects, and so I really do appreciate all of you reaching out to me via email or text or any other way to let me know your opinion about stuff. And I do have a few emails that I have not responded to in the past week or so. It is hunting season, and it's the end of summer, so I'm a little bit behind on my emails right now with that. But if you want more information about the Fairbanks East Ramp rehab and reconstruction project, there's a website you can go to, and it's FAI, that's the three-letter identifier for Fairbanks, GAapron.com. So FAIGAapron.com. That's all one word, no spaces, no special characters. FAIGAapron.com, and you can find out more information about that. If you do have an opinion, please let me know. Share that with me, as well as submitting those comments. They need to hear from as many people as possible, not just a few of us that represent larger groups. They need to hear from people within the same groups as well. So please, encourage you to participate in that public comment period and let me know what your take is on that. Speaking of Fairbanks, October 11th at 7 p.m. is the Fairbanks General Aviation Association, which, rabbit trail, we go on a lot of these on the updates. If your airport where you're based out of does not have a local users group, you should consider starting one. Birchwood has a very active one that has been very influential in being able to participate in the conversations of whether or not DOT and the municipality of Anchorage, who is going to manage that airport, and folks there at the local pilot group level are able to participate in that. Fairbanks has one. Lots of other airports around the state have these local user groups, and it is an important level of advocacy that you need to participate in for your home airport. But in October 11th, the Fairbanks General Aviation Association is having their fall meeting. I'll be giving a presentation there. I've been asked to talk about tie-down ropes. Yeah, that's a pretty contentious topic. I am working with UAF and their A&P program to see if we can't come up with a jig to be able to stress test rope and your particular knot that you may use, so we can actually find out if your knot is as strong as you think it is. But that meeting will be at 7 p.m. At the UAF aviation facility there on the East Ramp in Fairbanks, which, we're coming back into the time of year with the winter storms. A lot of folks are out remote areas hunting right now, trying to figure out the best way to tie down their aircraft. I'll be talking about that at the October meeting for that. Speaking of flying around and doing things, please check your NOTAMs. I've had a lot of people reach out to me because of fuel availability is not what they anticipated it was going to be at remote sites, at remote airports. Check your NOTAMs. Also, call ahead. Even though you check your NOTAM, please call ahead and confirm what you think is the situation. This is not the time of year to be out flying around only to realize that you don't have enough fuel to keep going and you can't go anywhere else. So call ahead, check NOTAMs, and all of those things. A lot of places where we normally are able to get fuel, things are changing a little bit. Supply chain, cost, overhead, all those things. And maybe even a little bit of local politics in a couple of places are changing the way fuel is being made available. And it's maybe only now in the certain hours of the business day, and then beyond that is a call-out fee. Or fuel may not be available at all because they just haven't got their shipment in. So I think that's happened to all of us at one point in our time flying here in Alaska, but call ahead. Check NOTAMs and call ahead. Speaking of getting fuel at unusual places, there's a couple of videos that have surfaced on social media in the past day or so of an aircraft landing at a gas station, refueling, and taking off again. I got a phone call today from someone totally unrelated to that event, asking again the question, is it legal to land on roads in Alaska? We've talked about this a lot, but just to remind you that while there is no specific statute in the state code prohibiting landing on roadways, there is also no statute that specifically permits it. There used to be, years ago, there was a statute on the books that permitted us to land on roadways in Alaska beyond just the normal emergency type situation. That is no longer the case, and so we need to be careful. We need to be careful when and how we choose to land on public roadways. There's obviously a lot of danger, a lot of risk involved with this between power lines, road signs, other traffic. So let's be careful. And remember, there are cameras everywhere these days. It amazes me the things that are caught on camera these days, and then our folks are put on, it's put on social media and instantly made famous for good or bad. And Tim, your question about a new possible airport, that is on my list to talk about, and we will get to that in just a moment. Let me update my talking point list here to make sure I have covered the things I want to. And fuel availability, yes, we covered that. So let's go ahead and talk about that one, Tim. So some of you may have seen an article in the Fairbanks News Monitor and in the Anchorage Daily News, which, is it the Daily News still? I can't remember. ADN, let's just call it the ADN, about the possibility of a potential new large airport. Doyon has been talking with the state of Alaska at some level about possibly building a large airport to be able to handle a 737-900 is what the hope would be for these people, to get tourists that much closer to the park, to Denali National Park, so that they don't have to, I think to quote an article, waste their time getting from Anchorage or from Fairbanks to the mountain, is what they are saying. They want to move the mountain closer to the tourist by moving transportation, things like this. So here's my take on this. Most of you know this already. I live in Nenana. Nenana is just north of the Alaska Range, just at the exit of the Windy Pass, just north of Clear Air Space Force Station. I still want to call it Air Force Station, but it's a Space Force Station now. And the new radar that's there, and the much larger special use airspace that's surrounding that radar. I have flown through Windy Pass coming up more than 27 years. I fly through a lot of the passes in the Alaska Range and in the Brooks Range throughout the year. The Windy Pass is a very heavily traversed pass in Alaska. It is a very important pass for the state of Alaska. It is the best route to get from Anchorage and the Mat-Su Valley into the interior, the central interior specifically. The notion of putting a 121 airport, that's the section of the regulations that dictate a lot of things about large airports with big passenger service. I am not an airport planner, I am not an airport designer, but I have a lot of concerns and a lot of questions about where in the world can you put an airport large enough to accept 737-900s and have a viable instrument approach and a viable missed approach procedure and not run into rising terrain, not run into wind turbines that are on the ridge at Eva Creek, and not run into special use airspace and the radar at the mouth of the north end of the pass. Those are very big hurdles for an airport of that size. The Denali Borough has talked about moving the Healy River Airport for many years. It comes up off and on. Those of you that have flown out of the Healy River Airport know that winds can be pretty tricky there. Terrain can be very tricky there, depending on which way you're trying to come and go from. The notion of a different airport in the Healy Valley, in the Nenana River Valley between Healy and the Rex Bridge, which I guess now is the Jack Coghill Bridge to the interior, just south of Clear. There has been some talk of possibly putting a runway there. That has merit, but an airport large enough to accept daily service from a 737-900 series, I just don't know that that's going to happen. So the Alaska Airmen's Association is on this issue. I'm doing some more research on it, reading through the pamphlet, the 22, 23 pages of a pamphlet to get through. and find out more about that issue. And I'll be reaching out to Doyon. I'll be reaching out to DOT. I'm sure this is a topic that's going to come up in the next Aviation Advisory Board meeting, of which I am a member, and we will be finding out some more information about that as it comes available. So we'll just have to keep an eye on it. I don't have any answers for you right now about that, Tim. And you just dated yourself there when you said you haven't landed at Healy since it was paved. I'm not going to ask you how old you are because I got a really good idea. Anyway, so we've checked that one off the list for tonight. Just a reminder, we're in an election cycle right now. We just actually our new representative, Peltoa, was sworn into office today, and she is filling in for the remaining period for Don Young's seat. She is up for re-election in the normal elections coming up in November. And so a lot of local elections and state elections along those lines. And I encourage you to do your homework, find out the issues that are important to you, and ask your potential candidates their positions on those things. I have traveled around the world, spent time in other parts of the world where they are not as fortunate as we are to be able to participate in our government at this level. Please don't take this for granted. Please do your homework. Please vote. I personally don't care who you vote for. I want you to vote. I want you to participate. If for no other reason, if you don't vote, you don't have an excuse to complain about politics. So do your homework. Find out the candidate's position on issues that are important to you. Aviation obviously is a big part of our life here in Alaska. Ask them those questions. Find out what their opinion is on those. People have asked, and so I'm going to go ahead and just say it here. The Alaska Airmen's Association does not endorse political candidates. That's just something we have never done. We are a nonprofit corporation. We have to be very careful about endorsing and talking about candidates, and it is not. Well, the IRS takes a very dim view of nonprofit corporations endorsing political candidates. So we're just not going to go there. What I will say, what I'm very comfortable in doing, is encouraging you to do your homework, do your research, and vote. Please do that. So, all right, let's see. Something else on the list for tonight. We have a new airport manager from Merrill Field. Mr. Rich Sewell is a former DOT employee and actually used to work for the municipality of Anchorage before he went to DOT many years ago. I know Rich, have worked with him for years, great guy, and he has now moved over to Merrill Field to be their manager, and just got his new email address today, was using his personal email up until now, but he is in the office, and so we're going to be interested to see what his plans and ideas are as the new manager for Merrill Field. And I will tell you that Rich is a friend of General Aviation. Rich is a good guy. So, what else can we talk about tonight? Well, so one other thing that has come up is the FAA is reaching out to some folks, and there's a possibility of them needing to redo a check ride. The number is a 709 ride. You may have heard that phrase before. There's an examiner here in the state, used to be an examiner in the state, that the FAA had some questions about the check rides that person was giving, and in the course of the FAA's investigation, they determined that they need to go back and reevaluate some of the candidates and make sure that everything was done correctly. So if you have not heard from the FAA about this issue, chances are you're okay. This is not without precedent. Thankfully, it is very unusual. It's not a normal occurrence that this would happen, but it is not without precedent that the FAA would come back and say, you know, we had this pilot examiner that we just don't think was performing to the standards for whatever the reasons, and it could be any number of reasons. And they want to come back and verify and make sure. So if you have gotten one of those 709 ROD letters, and you have questions about what you're supposed to do or whatever, feel free to reach out to the Alaska Airmen's Association. I can kind of help you work through that process. It's a little bit of a hassle, to be honest. It's a pain to have to go back and redo some of these things. But from the FAA's perspective, let's look at it from their perspective. Their goal is to make sure that people are actually qualified for the ratings that they have and the certificates that they have. And they put their faith and trust in designated pilot examiners that are acting on behalf of the FAA. And when that person comes into question, the FAA has an obligation to the flying public, to the rest of the public in general at large, that that pilot is going to be safe and can perform up to the standards that are specified. And so the FAA has an obligation to ensure that that has happened. So that's why this is going on. And again, apologize to those folks that thought that they did everything right, and they probably did. But the FAA just has a few questions. So please do not blow this off. If you get a letter talking about a 709 ROD because of a check ride with a specific examiner, please do not ignore that letter, because you will lose your certificate in the end if you ignore that. So follow through the process, go through the steps, and hopefully it won't be that big of a deal for you. All right, so one quick thing to talk about before we wrap things up. This is a little bit of a teaser. I don't have a lot of information to give out publicly about specifics or anything else at this point, but look for news about a research project involving pilot reports here in Alaska. What I am able to say is that there's some pretty exciting things in this research project involving artificial intelligence, involving voice recognition, involving submitting and receiving pilot reports through artificial intelligence and voice synthesizers, and the whole phrase talking to your phone, hey Siri, or hey Alexa, all those things. There's a research project right now to use that same concept over the radio, talking to a computer to be able to submit and receive pilot reports. And so as that project gets a little bit further along, I can give you some more details about that. But if you're going to be in the area where this project is happening, you probably will want to participate. There's actually some motivation to participate, and I'll just leave it at that. Okay, so that's all that I had for the list, just to confirm and go through. Just a reminder looking at that. And again, apologize for the noise of the airplanes that are coming and going. September's a busy season, and I'm located between the float pond, the grass ski strip, and the paved runway here in Nenana, and a lot of folks are out flying today, which is good. Not complaining at all. Love the sound of airplanes. So when you're out flying, this hunting season right now, please be careful. And I mentioned this last month. Do a legit, actual, honest to goodness weight and balance, please. Folks push the limits, especially during hunting season. Do a for real weight and balance. I'm begging you. Don't push the weather. Just don't do it. I've probably told you this before, but over on the side over here where the controls for the hangar door, I have printed up a little sign. And on that sign, I have to look at it before I can push the button. It's right there at the buttons. And paraphrase of what it says is, don't talk yourself into flying today. You don't have to do this today. It's okay to be a day or two late. It is not okay to be years too early. Let that sink in for a second. I had an old timer tell me that when I first came to Alaska flying 27 years ago. He said, Adam, it's okay to be a day late. It's not okay to be years too early. So don't push the weather. Don't push weight and balance. Be careful. Make good choices. Kind of feel like a dad talking to my daughters right now. Make good choices. Be safe out there, folks, and we'll talk to you again next month.